We know that pit bulls are dangerous.
We have no pit bull enforcement in Cincinnati.
They're scared. The public is scared.
No BSL!
Boy and a dog are dead after a vicious dog mauling in San Francisco.
The Humane Society of the United States opposes breed bans.
It's not really about public safety. It's about targeting breeds of dogs.
Most Americans believe that these pit bulls are natural-born killers and they can never be trained. What do you know that most people don't?
Well, I've been raised around them since I was a little kid, and I can tell you, doing rescue, show, agility, I've never once been bitten by a pit bull. It's all in how they're bred and trained and raised. Chaco was the first pit bull that my family owned. It was actually my stepfather Abe's dog. And when Abe came, and so he asked around, what's the best American dog? And people told him the American Pit Bull Terrier. And he didn't really know what that was. And he said, well, okay, well, what's the best line of the American Pit Bull Terrier? And the people that he were asking at the time said, well, Going Light Barney. I said, okay, well, how can I get a Going Light Barney dog? He got hooked up with the sheriff, took him over to see the litter, and he liked Chaco because Chaco was kind of independent and doing his own thing. And as it turns out, Going Light Barney was a famous fighting dog, and the Going Light line is a fighting line. And at the time, he didn't really know much about it. Chaco was really just a phenomenal dog.
It was his first experience with an animal, a dog, in the home being a pet. Because in his country and in his culture, dogs are primarily used for herding and sheep and, things of that sort.
I did not want any other kind of dog. I want an American dog. If I'm in America, I want an American dog. I want to see what's American dog. And I looked everywhere until I find American dog. I did not know anything about pit bull, vicious like this. I got the dog and I loved the dog from the beginning, and he stayed with me all the time.
Growing up with pit bulls, I was always aware that they had a certain, somewhat negative reputation just because people would occasionally make comments. There was a situation where Abe was walking Chaco down the street, and a woman and her little girl came up, and they were just fawning all over the dog. Oh, what a pretty dog. Oh, he's so well behaved. And the little girl loved him and was crawling all over him, and then was riding him like a horse. And the woman was saying, oh, I'm thinking of getting a dog, and he's so good with children. What kind of dog is that? And Abe said, oh, well, he's a pit bull. And she just freaked out, and she grabbed her kid, and she said, I can't believe you let a pit bull around a child, and stormed off. So growing up, I always had an idea that there was breed discrimination. I became really conscious about it, however, when I moved to Texas for grad school. And I walked into the Bryan County shelter in Texas, and I was going to adopt a pit bull. I figured, well, now that I'm out here. So I walk in, and I asked the lady at the desk, I'm like, oh, so do you have any pit bulls here? And she looks at me and she goes, vicious dogs. And I said, oh, pit bulls aren't vicious. And she goes, why do you want a pit bull? Only drug dealers have pit bulls. And I said, well, I'm not a drug dealer. I'm a PhD student at Texas A&M. And I said, well, because I couldn't imagine, puppy comes in. How can a puppy be vicious? And she goes, no, we euthanize them. We don't adopt them out. I said, you euthanize puppies? And she said, yeah. And I go, well, if you get a dog in that you're going to euthanize, can you just call me and I can come take a look? I didn't really know what a rescue was, but I was so incensed by that conversation that I went home and I researched pit bull rescues, and I found that there weren't a lot out there. A lot has changed since I founded Chaco in 1996. Obviously, today hundreds, if not thousands, of pit bull rescues exist across the United States. We take volunteers where we can find them. I don't have a staff or any paid people that are doing things. It's basically people that are passionate about the breed and or breed-specific legislation and want to do something. They sign on to volunteer to help. Another thing that I've done to try and get the word out and educate people is I wrote a book about pit bulls and breed discrimination. So I've been on live local television, been on Scarborough Country and NPR, and in various newspaper articles. There is no breed of dog known as the pit bull. The term pit bull comes from the American Pit Bull Terrier, which is a breed of dog recognized by the United Kennel Club and the American Dog Breeders Association. But pit bull itself is used to describe a variety of breeds. Basically any short-haired dog with a sort of squarish head and short muzzle. Bull Terriers, American Staffordshire Terriers, Staffordshire Bull Terriers, American Bulldogs, Prussia Canarios, you name it, there's a whole list of dogs. I use the term pit bull because the media has given pit bull such a negative connotation. So when I'm out in public and somebody sees Tari or Savvy and they say, oh my God, that's such a cute dog, or oh my God, he's so well behaved, what kind of dog is it? I look at them and I say, this is a pit bull.
San Francisco has been in a state of shock over the case of 33-year-old Diane Whipple, a college lacrosse coach who was mauled to death by a neighbor's dog in the hallway outside her apartment. A fighting breed known as Presa Canario, or dog of prey, are very popular with drug dealers.
After that incident, San Francisco didn't think it had to do anything about dangerous dogs. Those weren't pit bulls, I suppose, so they didn't think that they needed to do anything. But sure enough, the first time they have a fatal pit bull mauling, they decide, we're going to target pit bulls.
The law was authored by State Senator Jackie Speer after a pit bull killed a 12-year-old San Francisco boy last summer.
She kept it in the house with a female in heat and locked her own son in the basement to give the two dogs a chance to mate.
The parent actually knew that the dogs might do this, to the extent that they took steps to try to protect the child. Weak steps to put them down the stairs.
After that incident, San Francisco wanted to introduce a law to target pit bulls. But California had a state law at the time that said you can't discriminate against a breed of dog.
The bill would allow local governments to draft laws targeting specific breeds.
Breed-specific legislation is where there's an ordinance or some type of law that's passed that only affects a certain breed.
There's no dangerous breed. There's individual dogs that are dangerous.
Tonight, a Sacramento attorney is leading an effort to repeal the state's dangerous dog law. Dawn Kapp and her supporters are gathering signatures to qualify a ballot measure to overturn SB 861. That law allows counties to require certain types of dogs to be spayed or neutered.
This case was horrific, and I just don't think there's a bad dog. I just think there's bad owners. There was something seriously wrong with that situation to allow that to happen, and I am appalled at the city and state's response to that. It's just, let's get rid of them all. That's the way they want to deal with it.
When SB 861 was introduced, I testified in front of the legislature opposing it. We instituted many different demonstrations, filed a lawsuit against San Francisco. We've also filed a Department of Justice complaint against Contra Costa County.
I knew once I opened the door to breed-specific legislation, I can't begin to tell you what I was called through emails and through the phone. It was not very pleasant, and I knew it would happen. There goes Friedman, the killer.
The Senate passing a bill that would allow cities to demand mandatory castration of pit bulls and other breeds determined to be a danger. The pit bull now awaits the bill now awaits the approval of Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger.
What we wound up doing was basically saying that all pit bulls and pit bull mixes must be spayed or neutered.
And the original version of SB 861 allowed for anything and everything besides an outright ban, but laws so restrictive that they would be a ban, such as if we declare this breed dangerous and require liability insurance in muzzling in public, no insurance company will cover you if you have a dog, so you won't find a place to live.
And I know they don't agree with me on this. I know they're advocates for this particular breed. I understand that. I think it's wonderful. And in their mind, they feel that by passing breed-specific legislation for pit bulls or any particular breed, you just help to hurt the reputation of the breed.
It's challenging. I can't move from my house because I can't get in anywhere, service to live.
As my capacity as Director of Animal Care and Control, in my mandate from the mayor, I had to come up with something that I thought would really help and work. I mean, many cities said just ban the suckers.
Carl Friedman also in his working group report listed as best practices, something to model, Denver's outright breed ban implemented in 1989.
It was not long after I began practicing law that I began reading in the newspaper about the city of Denver knocking on people's doors and taking dogs. And I just thought that was remarkable power that the city of Denver was exercising over people's companion animals. As a dog owner and my dog, it would be a very serious thing, and I would undoubtedly end up in jail. The standard for whether the government can interfere with your relationship with your dog is extremely low and forgiving for governments. And it's what's called rational review. Does the city have a rational basis for implementing this ordinance?
Animal control has been ordered to York. Kelly and other pit bull owners in Denver are illegally hiding their dogs from the law. Sonia Diaz runs the Underground Railroad.
Laws need to be for people. They need to be for people, not for dogs and not for one particular breed.
But lawmakers who back Denver's ban on pit bulls disagree. As a result, this 43-acre dog refuge south of the Mile High City has become home to more than 60 pit bulls. Mariah's Promise takes care of the dogs until they are adopted or their owners move out of Denver.
I met Karen Breston through Sonia Diaz, contacted them right away once I knew that they were going to euthanize my dog. Murder my dog, in my opinion. Karen really helped fight for this, and she did her best.
The state of Colorado passed a law prohibiting municipalities from having breed-specific laws. Denver fought that as a home rule city with special governmental powers and prevailed.
Yeah, this is real. Like come May 9th, they're gonna round up your dog and kill them. And honestly, I kind of went through this time of denial, like, wait a second, this is like, the new millennium, a modern city, and in America. Like, they're not gonna just round up your dog and take him. And come to find out, absolutely, that's exactly what they did on May 9th.
When the law was reinvoked, they gave a warning in the newspaper that this was your 30-day notice. Not everybody read the warning.
You're making it slightly worse, as if that isn't bad enough. They went to the people who had tried to get their pit bull type dogs registered.
I don't think people believed anything was going to happen either. I think that before you were able to have 30 days to get your dog out of Denver County, you got fined, you had to do the whole thing, but you got your dog out. Not this time. The law went into effect, and they came out and took family pets who had never done anything other than be a family pet.
In the 3 months since Denver imposed the ban, the city has put to death more than 340 pit bulls at this facility. The director of animal controls here says he's had little choice.
If people are going to have them in Denver, then unfortunately you stand the chance of them of being impounded.
I moved to Denver in May of 1998. I moved here with Ophelia and her daughter Iris, who were two of my rescues in California. And the clinic I was working at, we had a dog that needed a blood transfusion. And so I said, I have dogs at home, and I went home and got her. And they said, she's illegal here, do you know that? And I didn't. I had no idea. There was nothing that I could do as a veterinarian to make sure that she would be safe. I stopped her walks, and I am not a law-breaking citizen, but she's my family. And I feel as if I've been put in a position to make a decision about breaking the law versus taking care of my family.
If your dog is taken, you go to animal control. If you're home, you know they got your dog. If you're not home, they stick something on your door. You go to animal control. They push these two papers at you, waiving your privilege against self-incrimination and your right to a hearing. You then are allowed to get your dog out of Denver if you bring the third person in who agrees to take possession of the dog. Okay? So the seizure of your dog does not automatically lead to a dog being killed.
And if you look at what started this, there were two major attacks that were pit bull, or done by pit bull type dogs. One of which was in Denver, and it was a little boy, and I just saw his picture, and he's just darling, and he wandered away from his family home. He wandered a couple of blocks away and wandered into this carport of this guy who had a dog chained there with puppies. Here's my dog Griffey, whose life, granted, before he met me was not good, not a good existence. Who his life is kisses and car rides and treats and belly rubs and sort of integrated into, life. What does he have to do with that dog who killed that little boy? Except that they're both dogs. What?
So if a dog is found back in Denver a second time, then they will promptly kill it. And just this summer, one of our clients in the second lawsuit, she had her dog killed. And her dog was picked up the first time in 2003. It was picked up again this year.
We actually had our house up for about 3 months, but there's no luck with it, so we just took it off. And this was before they'd taken him, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Just because we didn't want because it was an always constant stress on my mind, day in and day out.
People can't just uproot themselves, give up their homes, give up their jobs, move away to avoid laws like this.
But if I let the city of Denver take and kill my dog, I'll be like 95 sitting on like my front porch on my rocker, and I would still have the absolute pain of that.
What I'm looking at here is the first ordinance that banned the pit bulls in the city of Cincinnati, which was passed back in 1987. And it's been modified a couple of times since then. And here we are still tackling this issue.
What has really gotten under my skin the most about all of these discussions is, in doing my history, this was a law that was put into effect, and we got complaints, people didn't like it. So in the late 90s, council decided they'd be nice and do their typical task force, which I don't always agree with, because they want to please everybody, and you just can't do that. It's impossible to please everybody. They had some of the very same ideas that are being presented today, microchips, registering your dogs, et cetera, et cetera. That didn't work. So finally in 2003, council said, done, pit bulls are gone, they're banned.
In 2003, I had to have her microchip, and she's got a tattoo, a blue tattoo, that's supposed to have the last numbers of her microchip. And then I had to take pictures down, mug shots down at the police station, like a front view and a side view. And they wouldn't let me have kids in it because I had some with kids in it, and they wouldn't take those. And then you had to have insurance and everything like that. And it was like, I remember when I took it down, it said vicious dog, you know, on the thing, and I crossed off the vicious, so they filled out a new one. And I said, she's not vicious, and they said, that doesn't matter. So.
This is my dog, Lulu. I've had her since 2002. She came from a no-kill shelter. Luckily for me and for Lulu, I was able to get her grandfathered in. So she is a legally registered pit bull within the city of Cincinnati. In order to do that, I am now registered with the police department as a vicious dog harborer. This is Wrigley, and she is from Stray Rescue in St. Louis. And I got her because I went in looking for a dog under 50 pounds with short hair that was super affectionate, and this is what they gave me. So, and they were right. We moved to Cincinnati last fall in August, and less than a week before I moved here, I found out that there was a pit bull ban. And I was concerned because she has characteristics that some people might consider she looks like a pit bull or an American Staffordshire Terrier.
I have lived here since 1999, and Jim's born and raised.
Between here and Dayton, but my entire adult life I've lived in the inner city of Cincinnati, different neighborhoods.
Love our neighborhood. In fact, got a great neighborhood group that we hang out with, and really active in the community, and on our community councils, and pick up trash and dog poop a lot, and do neighborhood cleanups, and love the diversity. As far as their breed, according to their veterinarian, they could be mixed boxers, and oftentimes we're stopped and usually asked what kind of breed they are. I just say mutt. I have no idea. They were both rescues. They were both found on the street.
Back in June of 07, I had a Law and Public Safety Committee meeting in the community of Westwood. And at that meeting, the president of the Westwood Community Council came before the committee to express concern of a lack of enforcement of the current law as it exists.
We have no pit bull enforcement in Cincinnati. I call the police on pit bulls all the time, and I know nothing's going to happen. I just want the report to get made. Please work on getting that fixed so we can get them off the streets.
Let me ask the law department, what is our rule now on the pit bull situation? I thought we had an ordinance. Has that been repealed, or what is the status of that at this point? Turns out that the ordinance was not enforceable, simply because, number one, it referenced the SPCA warden. Well, the dog warden cannot enforce city ordinances. So we also found out that our Cincinnati police could not enforce it in any real significance simply because they were not trained. And so we had to, in fact, take a look at changing the whole ordinance itself.
On other matters relating to City Council, I was on their website and actually found a motion made for police officers to be trained to identify pit bulls in order to increase enforcement.
Diligently, like they do, for example, in Denver.
I sent out a mass email. I copied the motions, attached them, listed American temperament testing, gave the date and time of when the Law and Public Safety Committee would meet, and would hope that it would just be mass emailed. And in return, I got quite a huge response, and I think 12 of us showed up on that day to speak in front of law committee about the two motions.
The current ordinance singles out this breed as being unlawful to own, keep, possess, control, and harbor in this city. Eliminating a specific breed does not deal with the problem of vicious dogs.
But it doesn't matter which breed they are. It just matters what they do.
I hope that you will provide the community with constructive legislation that targets the problem, not furthers a negative stereotype that gives good bully breed dogs a bad rap.
I would just like you to reconsider this and aim toward the people that are causing the problem and develop harsher penalties so that people that abuse animals can be held more accountable for it.
After I spent $1,500 on my purebred Blue American Pitbull Terrier, when I went to register him, I was informed that he was illegal. I am no longer a resident in the city of Cincinnati.
And at that time, back in September of 2007, the motions were tabled and a vicious dog task force was formed.
That's where the fight started. Again.
Anybody in this room or anybody in this city who has a dog that was obtained after 2003 and is a pit bull, it's illegal. And I really have zero sympathy for you.
I'm Ben Hershey.
I'm Ashley Hershey.
And we live in the city of Mariemont. It's about a stone's throw from the city of Cincinnati, 10 minutes from downtown. We've lived here for 2 years. Prior to that, we lived in the city of Cincinnati our whole lives, and we moved because of the Pitbull ban.
And we now live here with 4 dogs, 4 Pitbull dogs.
We love it here. People are very welcoming. They have no Pitbull laws. They just require and promote responsible ownership, which we have.
Right now we can't even drive our dogs, which love to swim, to his parents' house to swim because they live in Cincinnati.
And we
We're
can.
not allowed to do that.
We can. But now that they start increasing all these bans and enforcing them, what's to say I'm not driving down the street and I drive by a police officer and he happens to say, pull your car over?
Purpose of the the trained police officers is to investigate complaint-driven calls and to follow up on those investigative type calls. They're not going to be out like the dog warden running around looking for dogs that are strays and trying to grab them up and all that. That's not their charge.
I hope to God that never happens, because I don't know what I would do. I can tell you I'm probably not going to let him take the dog out of my car.
The point is, it's illegal. And you can be angry, and you can yell, and you can scream, and you can sit here and laugh, but it's illegal. And all we're asking with this ordinance is to allow police officers to be trained so that they can come to the site and say, Pitbull mix, remove the dog.
I'm the founder and one of the directors of the Miami Coalition Against Breed-Specific Legislation. And the reason this group was founded was because there's so much public outcry that the politicians in Miami-Dade County are simply not listening to.
It's called a pit bull ban, and those are the words used in the ordinance, but in fact it's more an ordinance that looks at certain characteristics of a dog similar to a Staffordshire Terrier using a variety of kennel association characteristics.
The ordinance itself actually just discriminates the breeds not based on their temperament or whether they're really a public nuisance or not, just based on their breed. And that's very unfortunate because very many innocent dogs and innocent families have lost their dogs because of this particular ban.
During the 1980s in Miami-Dade, there was a huge drug trafficking problem, and a lot of people who engage in those illegal activities would train fighting dogs, most commonly pit bulls, and there were many serious attacks. And I think that the commissioners passed that law in 1989 as a reaction to try to get a handle on that situation.
It's what's called a knee-jerk legislation in which they basically put out a law very quickly that affected any one particular person or a very small group of people within the county.
If it wasn't for the sun and water, I'd be out of here. Miami used to be an incredible place. I've always rescued animals since I can remember. I found this pit bull that came across when I was driving. I popped her in the car, and she was in bad shape. She had just had puppies. They threw her out in the street. So I picked her up, took her to my vet, and she was there for 3 days. And I found out that they were illegal in Dade County. I was like very surprised. As most people, I didn't have a freaking clue. So I didn't know what to do with this dog. I knew if I turned it into animal service, they were going to kill it. So I didn't want to do that. I get a frantic phone call. The Miami Beach Police Department confiscated my dog, arrested my friend because she resisted arrest because they were taking the dog. So by the time I got there, the dog was in the doggy police wagon, and she was handcuffed and back with police squad car. They didn't want to give me the dog. But if it wasn't because I did some rescue with them already, the other breeds, I don't think I've ever would have got my dog back. I took the dog back, and I got it out of the county ASAP.
Our department, like every other animal control, is complaint driven. And so we would get a complaint about a pit bull, using the slang term, and one of our investigators will go out and they have a checklist of characteristics that they use to determine if the dog is greater than 51% pit, or pit has those pit characteristics. So it's less about a breed and more about those characteristics. If the dog is evaluated and conforms to those characteristics, we give the owners 48 hours to relocate the dogs outside of Dade County and show us proof that the dogs were moved. But they do get an immediate citation, and they have the option to appeal.
I've always believed one of the biggest animal cruelties committed is when you take a dog and give it up after it's been with the family for a while. That dog, no matter what, it's traumatized. It will never forget its own family. It would always be sad in a way. And for them to be confiscating good pets because of an asinine ordinance, it's inhumane.
If the dog owner is not home, then we would leave a card and ask them to contact us. We're not allowed to enter private property, obviously, so we would need to go back and do the evaluation another day.
Just last year, there were about 800 pit bulls killed in Miami-Dade County Animal Services, just in this county.
One of the things that legislators tend to quote is the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, study on dog bites a few years ago. And the CDC is an interesting study because the authors themselves in the CDC say you shouldn't really rely on this report because, one, we grabbed a bunch of our statistics from newspaper articles. So what we're really measuring is what breeds of dogs newspapers choose to report on. And two, they're comparing pit bull type dogs and mixes to a bunch of purebred dogs, single breeds.
Statistics, like I said, can always be bent for the purpose of what the agency wants them to see, but you got to take it with a grain of salt. I didn't need to read a CDC report that I got problems with pit bulls. I could tell them.
I guarantee you that, say, if I made a call on this phone right now to a news station and I said, oh my God, a pit bull just bit a child outside of, this building, we would have a news van come right outside to do the story. But if I said, oh my gosh, a lab or a cocker spaniel just bit a child, do you think there would be a news van here? No.
In Northern California, another horrible attack on a child, this one by vicious dogs, one that has many people shaking their heads in disbelief tonight.
2 people have been killed in separate attacks by pit bull dogs.
The number of serious, even fatal attacks by dogs is growing rapidly in some areas, especially among dog breeds known for their vicious traits. And there is a growing problem to report tonight with Pitbull Terriers. These dogs can be vicious.
There's 4.5 million dog bites reported to emergency rooms every year. Okay, and that's the CDC statistic. So 300 million Americans, 74 million dogs of all breeds. You have a 0.0002% chance of being bit by a dog. Where's the epidemic?
When a pit bull, let's say, mauls somebody or a pit bull bites somebody, chances are you're going to see that on the first or second page of the newspaper and probably on the 5 o'clock news, 6 o'clock news. If another dog bites somebody or a different breed bites somebody, chances are it won't even be reported.
That's what professional journalists do. They put things on page one of the headlines, and then they move them down the page below the fold, as it is said, or move to an inside page. And all these movements have an influence on how people see stories. Sometimes it has a negative effect.
Most people in the nation have heard about the pit bulls that killed Nicholas Fabish in San Francisco. If I ask somebody, which I have on the street when I've been collecting signatures, did you hear about little Caitlin Logal in Colorado that was killed by her family's 2 Siberian Huskies? They say no. Who? What? But if you ask them, did you hear about Nicholas Fabish, who was killed by the pit bulls in San Francisco? Oh yeah, those pit bulls in San Francisco. So what? Caitlin Logal's life isn't as important as Nicholas Fabish because she wasn't killed by pit bulls?
Years ago, my colleague Max McCombs, who teaches at Texas now, but he was here with me, was curious to study the power of the press in setting the agenda, telling us what to think about. So we got together and we studied the 1968 campaign and discovered that the main media, newspapers and television, do seem to tell people what to think about. So it's come to be called the agenda setting function of the press. Our research indicates that if media persistently talk about a topic, that topic becomes important to the audience and more effective by agenda setting in any medium if they know little or nothing about the topic.
When I first brought my first pit bull home, Pandora, I was terrified. I had the same ideas about pit bulls that everyone else who had read about them in the newspaper and heard about them on the news had.
When he brought him home that day, I was totally against him. I mean, I printed papers off the internet, library books. I did a lot of research for a couple weeks. Start falling more into my own opinion versus the media.
When I first heard she had a pit bull, I said, oh my gosh, I'm not coming near there. And a couple of times when I did come in, I just sat there like a stiff poker because I was scared to death any movement she would get me. And I think I attributed that really to what the media had basically taught me about this breed of dog.
A lot of what local news is fear. You know, you need to watch tonight because, you know, this is dangerous.
If you tend to say a story over and over again or a topic over and over again in any medium, you tend to think quite naturally it's important. If you have certain words that are repeated over and over again in association with a topic, you naturally make kind of an association with that topic. We discovered that if another breed attacks, it's often not mentioned in the headline. It's just dog attacks. But where pit bulls are involved, it's usually pit bull attacks. So there is an association made there more in the headlines for pit bulls in our little examination of it. lived in a neighborhood where there's a dangerous dog attack, regardless of breed, that you would want to give it a lot of publicity. From that point of view, any dog attack would be treated as a public threat. Among the most important readers or users of media are our leaders. They're among the most important people who read the media, and they develop impressions as well from the way issues are presented and framed.
I have my legislatures or my councilmen deciding on the welfare of my dogs. But also, I put a certain amount of blame on the media. They have contributed to what they think and what they perceive.
The city's position is that every pit bull poses a risk to the public. That's a completely ludicrous position, but that's the city's position.
For them to say that all pit bulls are born aggressive, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. It's not factual, it's uneducated, and it's biased.
Frankly, that general impression is the biggest barrier that all of us trying to fight these laws face.
Pit bulls are not born with any more inherent aggression than any other dog. It's a lie, it's a myth, it's something that's been perpetuated through the media and folklore. There's too many broad strokes. You need individual dog behavior assessment.
You sit. That's a down. Upset. Okay, get your ball.
So what we do is test the dog's temperament. Every breed is judged differently. I know that I've been doing it a long time, and I do a lot of shows, thousands and thousands of dogs, and I've had a lot of pit bulls, and they score very high, very well, very friendly. Today, so far, they've all done excellent, above average score in all of them, and that's usually how they score.
Ultimately, people are the greatest variable in a dog's training and behavior. So we want to make sure that we're doing things in a way that keeps the dog sound. You know, I had a dog that had issues, and I needed to resolve these issues. And I didn't want to use choke chains or electric shock. I wanted to do things that were humane. And that's what drew this to me, is that I had a dog that had issues, so I needed to fix them. The purpose for aggression is to create distance. So when a dog goes, and they're aggressing, they want that thing, that scary thing to go away. That's the purpose of it. That's different than prey acquisition, which is, ooh, I see a little furry, I'm gonna go get dinner. So when a dog is aggressing towards people or towards other dogs, there is a fear involved in it. The dog is afraid. Pit bulls are self-socializers. You know, they want to go up and meet people generally. They're very friendly dogs.
There are a lot of myths associated with pit bulls. One of them is that they have a locking jaw, which isn't true. Pit bulls' jaws don't lock. The other myth is that their jaws can press down with 2,500 or 3,000 pounds per square inch, which is approximately the jaw strength of a crocodile. That's not true, and in fact, National Geographic did a study on dog bite. They tested a Rottweiler, a German Shepherd, and a Pit Bull, the strength of each of those dogs' bites. And the Pit Bull came in last.
I've trained somewhere in the area of 400 to 500 Pit Bulls over the past 17 years. And I've trained them all from blue ribbon Pit Bulls to just mutt Pit Bulls or mixed breed Pit Bulls that are in the rescue world and in the public shelters.
Get it from her! Get it, Savvy, get it! Get it, Savvy, get it! Get it! It's a perfect chance! Get it, Savvy! Come on, Savvy, get around! Tug!
There are different levels of breedsman level. A county that says we don't want pit bulls in dog parks, or San Francisco that is targeting pit bulls, that's a local ordinance.
We're in Centennial Park in Nashville, Tennessee. There's a big sign over there that said pit bull mix or pit bulls or anything that has physical resemblance to a pit bull can't go in.
Technically, we shouldn't be in this dog park with Stewie. Stewie, as an American pit bull, isn't allowed in public parks. Many of them are very, very special dogs. yet they're banned from public places. Stewie was actually born deaf. He's very, very gentle, very, very intelligent, and very, very loving.
I could be fined for having my dog in here. It makes me very sad to have the dog discriminated against, and even the owner.
And so how do you refute whether an animal control officer thinks a dog has a big head or not? Whether the tail is curved or whether it is straight? And so these are very subjective determinations, and how do you refute that?
That's a Pitbull, and basically we came up with a checklist. The City and County of San Francisco Department of Animal Care and Control considers a dog to predominantly a Pitbull breed, that's American Staffordshire Terrier, American Pitbull Terrier, or Staffordshire Bull Terrier, if she possesses 5 out of the 8 characteristics. Head. And there's a checkbox you'll see on our checklist. The head is medium length with a broad skull and a very pronounced cheek. Eyes are round to almond shaped and are low in the skull and set pretty far apart. Ears are set high, uncropped ears are short. Neck is heavy in musculature, attached to strong muscular shoulders. Tail is medium length, set low, thick at the base, tapering to a point. The hindquarters are well muscled with hocks set low on the legs. Coat is smooth, short, close to the skin.
They're really not getting training on vicious behavior. They're getting training on identifying breeds.
Dade County takes it even a step. What they're doing is they're taking the description of UKC of 3 different breeds, Staffies, the Pitbulls, and they're combining all 3 into one type of breed. And a tail. It could fall under a
mix Dexter just about everywhere he goes. But for one business trip, this Thornton resident dropped off Dexter with a friend in Denver. Records show an animal control officer saw the dog in the backyard, suspected he was a pit bull, and took him to the pound. O'Connell said about proving the city wrong. He had an AKC and a UKC judge evaluate his pet. And they said he's not a pit bull.
This verdict shows that Denver cannot enforce its pit bull ban. They do not have qualified experts in order to enforce this ban and determine the breeds of the dogs.
The 90 breeds listed, and at the end of the 90 breeds, you're the average dog owner sitting there and going, how the heck did this happen? Well, it's because when it was pit bulls, you didn't say anything, and then it was Rottweilers and you didn't say anything, and then it was German Shepherds and you didn't say anything until all of a sudden it's your breed.
What's next? I mean,
that's the case. I mean, is it Mexicans? Is it blacks? Is it white? I mean, that's the same. There's no difference.
After I adopted Tiffin, it took a while to actually learn about BSL, but it didn't take very long to learn about stereotypes and bias. And if I had a pit bull, I either, live in the inner city, or I'm a drug dealer, or I'm a gangbanger. I couldn't be someone who worked in an attorney's office and had a decent job and a decent education. And I found that most pit bull owners do have decent jobs and great educations.
It's not right, I think we've all been stereotyped at some point in our life for something about our lifestyle, whether it be long hair, tattoos. It's just like a stereotype against a person for their race, religion, or creed. You can't let ignorance thrive in a community, even if it's with dogs.
If someone said that I couldn't bring him to the dog park just because he was a Weimaraner, I would obviously be upset. That's just like saying that a person couldn't go somewhere because of the way they look. For me, animals are the closest thing. Our pets are people to us. They're parts of our family. So to say that just because they are a certain breed or look a certain way that they can't go somewhere, it's just unacceptable to me.
You have, say, laws that target pit bulls and Presa Canarios, and the lab or the cocker goes and mauls and hurts somebody. And because it's not on one of the restricted lists, authorities may not be able to do very much.
A postal worker is recovering at home tonight after she was attacked by a dog on her route in Miami Gardens. Langley was rushed to the hospital with bites to her arms and her legs.
The Pitbull variety named Blue was picked up by animal control after it attacked mail carrier Georgina Pacheco yesterday in Miami's Shenandoah neighborhood. Blue was put down at the Miami-Dade Animal Shelter.
We certainly can't adopt a dog out who mauled someone, who potentially could have killed her if the owner hadn't intervened.
False.
In the 26 years that I've been working in this profession in many capacities, from vet tech to animal control to now veterinarian, I have never been bitten by a pit or pit type dog. My worst bite was from a golden retriever right here on my face. So go figure, the best family pet of all, and that was my worst bite.
So I took the stats, the dog bite stats from May 07 to May 08. And what it came out to was pit bulls, and I took anything that had pit in it. Came out to about 20%. And when I presented this to a certain councilman, I don't know if I want to use this because, we do 20%, we're the highest. And he was like, what about the
dog bites reported to emergency rooms every year? And it's not their fault. They're innocent because their behavior is directly connected to human behavior.
Turning now to other news, football star Michael Vick began paying the price today for his role in a dogfighting conspiracy. After Vick signed a plea agreement, the NFL suspended him indefinitely without pay.
Dogfighting fuels breed-specific legislation and breed bans. Irresponsible owners are really the problem here, and irresponsible owners are dogfighters.
Vick admits he was involved in the killing of 6 to 8.
You can't. They either have it or they don't. When you look at dog fighting and you look at two dogs fighting, you're looking at two very rare dogs. That's the exception. This is why Michael Vick was killing so many dogs, because they didn't want to fight.
The dogs, pit bulls, were killed.
The breed bans or the breed regulating laws that come up are because of that very small minority of bad dog owners.
The irresponsible dog owners are still fighting pit bulls, still in Miami-Dade County, but there's no particular task force set aside for that. If just the resources for the ban were used on a task force to be able to find the irresponsible dog owners, then innocent dogs would not have to die and innocent dogs would not have to suffer.
They have one full-time investigator on pit bulls only, not that the other ones aren't picking them up either. $30,000 is this investigator's annual salary. $30,000 wasted picking up good dogs and killing them.
Prevalent and out in the open, the dogs were just staked in the back of yards, and people would come and go freely and bust those dog fighting rings because they're underground. And when you get a tip and the dog fighters figure that out, they just move.
There are citizens living in the city of Cincinnati who profit from this particular venture, who do the training and all of these things, and hopefully with a ban on it, it would discourage individuals from wanting to conduct that kind of business here in the city.
In March of 2007, there was a dog fighting ring that was busted, Operation Bite Back. 19 people were arrested in Hamilton County. I looked up each individual conviction. 14 of those 19 people were convicted of 200 hours of community service. All of them were from Ohio.
Come on, go, Magpie!
Why not dogfight? If you get pretty much 20 hours a week, 5 weeks is your penalty.
The fact that they're made illegal makes them exotic and appealing to certain types of people as well, and that adds, unfortunately, a negative aspect.
When you make a dog illegal, you increase its desirability exponentially.
Go get the two-legged animals on the other end of the leash and stop picking on the four-legged ones. They're the beasts, they're the animals, not the dogs.
Violence is a learned behavior, and in many cases, these young men and women are taught subliminally and practically that pit bulls particularly are animals of violence. And it used to the animal, and it also desensitizes the youth.
The largest at-risk group is between the ages of 13 and 7 schools. Get to the kids and let them know that this is not the way to go.
Then, of course, breed-specific legislation discriminates against persons with disabilities. Because very often, like San Francisco and Denver, they don't have adequate exemptions for service dogs.
My name's Glenn W. Belcher. I served in the first Desert Storm in the United States Army. I live in the city of Denver, and I have a service dog that is on the banned breed list. He's an American Pitbull Terrier. And service dog until they looked at the breed. And then they told me no.
Yeah, if a dog is a true service animal as defined by ADA, it can be licensed, and in most cases that license is free.
He told me that there was no way that he was going to register Sky. First he asked me, which is against the law, he asked me what my...
I want to know what type of affliction that the person has, but some type of documentation that the dog is a bona fide service animal. It can be anywhere from a letter from a doctor to some organizations have cards or a certification process that they use.
In order for a person to have rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act to show that they have a disability, a care or a provider that will give them a certificate. So often people are not diagnosed, but they do in fact have disabilities.
Here in California, and I think probably the rest of the country, all one person has to say is, "This is my service dog." They don't need to get any blessing from me. They don't need to get a paper from me. They don't need to get a special tag from me. All they have to do is say it's their service dog.
If we have a question about whether something falls under the service animal category, then we just work with the city attorney's office.
Mr. Kelly informed me that if I was not deaf or blind, I was not disabled. And that if I wanted to keep the dog to move out of Denver into a suburb or get rid of the dog and stay in Denver. Neuropathy issues. Neuropathy is numbness and tingling of the legs and arms. So sometimes I can't pick things up or hold things. He carries my wallet for me. He carries my car keys for me. I also have night terrors, and I can tell how bad the night was by how close he's sleeping to me. I should not have to move. I fought for my country. I fought to defend its freedoms and liberties. This is my freedom and my liberty. If I can fight for my country's, I can fight for mine, and I can fight for my dog.
Pit bulls make good service dogs because they are compact, they have short hair, they don't require a lot of grooming, they're powerful for their size. Come on, get it, good girl, come on. San Francisco requires that all pit bulls within the city be spayed or neutered, with very small exceptions. So if you have a pit bull service dog, you'll have to have that dog spayed or neutered. What that means is that if you rely on that dog, you're going to be without that dog for up to 2 weeks.
We can work around that and make sure that they have the access that they need from that dog or another dog or something.
And you may lose that dog permanently because the dog has to go under anesthesia and surgery and it could die.
Unfortunately, infringing upon some people's rights, for whatever it might be, for the better good of all, is what we do in this country.
Progressive city supposedly in the United States of America, and it should be protecting and encouraging persons with disabilities to fully function in society. And instead of protecting the rights of persons with disabilities and honoring the Americans with Disabilities Act, it is so important for San Francisco to target pit bulls that it is willing to discriminate against persons with disabilities.
Frustrating part about the city of Cincinnati and the laws that they're either have in place or are attempting to put new ones in place is that, they're not going to work.
In December 2008, the city of Cincinnati to transport and house 50 pit bulls. Tell me, how is public safety served? On the Vicious Dog Task Force, we had the recommendation of a pit bull registration. So to allow the responsible owners to have their dog. But in 2003, only 42 people registered, so our city council, why bother? The registration doesn't work.
It's frustrating because when we've tried to change things and gone to work with politicians, what seems to happen is they're more interested in doing things that will help them politically or are politically motivated rather than finding out what the facts are.
And as a result, 15 months later, the pit bull ban, the insurance has been raised from $50,000 to $100,000 to be in compliance with state law. And the Cincinnati police officers have been trained not in visual identification of pit bulls, but more in the expedition of the administration process.
The job mandates also that present legislation that they don't agree with. So it doesn't affect me at all. I do understand the passions of citizens, though. People who have animals, they like children to those folks.
Once you start to mess around with a person's pet, a true pet that's considered a family member, that's like saying get rid of your child.
I have a dog myself, and if somebody passed legislation that said, my breed is banned in the city, I probably want to move out the city if that was the case.
City council members who make our decisions, or rescue for that matter. I mean, this is the most misaligned, abused targets. A breed that is so ineffective. Why? Our statistics don't show the criminal history of these previous owners, the history of the dog, is it spay and neutered, the environment, was it tethered, was it chained? None of that is taken into consideration, when in fact, it is the most important part of the statistic.
Imagine if you could never get away from the 5 feet that you lived in. Okay, so just for a moment as a human, imagine if you were chained to something and you could never move. Okay, now, look at it from a dog's perspective. That is stressful. If you see people constantly going back and forth, and you never get to greet them. And when you are in the presence of people, you're probably not being treated all that well. You're being ignored. You might be being beaten or yelled at. Most of the time, the media never looks at this as what is the human doing? What is the socialization history of this dog? What is the training this dog is receiving? And it's usually a perfect storm when this happens. Kids aren't supervised, the dogs are poorly socialized, they haven't been trained properly, there's more than one dog, dogs that are neutered or unspayed. They're more sensitive when they're in estrus or when they've got tons of... and then we have dogs who are roaming, dogs who are just running the streets, they may have a home, they may not, but they're not being humanely contained. And that's the criteria that surrounds all of these incidences, is that these dogs are not in the hands of responsible people.
Is the owner a criminal? Should they...
Property to make him money, to shield his drugs.
If you take their dog, they're just going to get another one. It doesn't matter. Their dog's not part of the family.
So to really protect children, we have to stop people from breeding dangerous dogs, selling dangerous dogs, and being irresponsible owners and letting dogs that they know are dangerous, no matter what the breed, running free out in public.
In 20 years.
During this hearing, basically concluded that this dog was not a pit bull. There were different factors that I was able to show, from flaps around the skin to an incredibly large size on the dog, to the fact that the nose on the dog did not conform to their pit bull standards. And all of that, coupled with their antiquated standards and illegal use of their standards within the ordinance, also contributed to us being able to be successful. The majority of the pit bulls that go through Miami-Dade County are adoptable. I see many of them day in, day out. The majority of them are adoptable. Unfortunately, they're kept in an area called West Wing, which the general public is not allowed in because the law says that they cannot be adopted in Miami-Dade County. So many of them end up getting put down. Many good families pass them right by, and unfortunately they don't get adopted just because they were born a pit bull.
There are rescue groups that we work with, and right now we have over 50 approved rescue partners, and there are some of those groups that do want to take and transfer pit bulls out of the county. So they get this automatic email, and I'm sure that there's pit bulls on here right now. So, and it might say, I need to live outside of Dade County.
I know most of the people over there pretty well, and I would say 95% of them, including the director, Sarah Pisano, does not want this banned. They know that pit bulls are not a dangerous breed. But unfortunately, they're under so much political pressure that they have no other alternative but to continue this madness of killing.
What we're looking to do is show enough proof in the unjust hearings that are currently happening and have been happening for so many years in Miami-Dade County, and we want to bring them, the county, to a real court of law.
There is a group, as I understand it, that will be suing Miami-Dade County to have this pit bull ban lifted. So if that should happen, then we would abide by whatever the ordinance ended up being.
We're not hoping to overturn the ban. We are going to overturn this ban.
So eventually I ended up selling my loft like a good 9 months after I put it on the market, and we got to move out of town. And it was amazing because immediately, you move out of town, it's like, I can just be normal. I can walk my dog like other people do. And there's a little bit of breathing room, but so much of the damage was done on everything leading up to that. And, just financially, friend-wise, everything else, every sort of facet of my life was just like wrecked.
We're going back to California. Ophelia has a brain tumor. She's not herself anymore, and she's going to go back home from where she came and live out the rest of her life with some freedom and walking and having the kind of life that every dog should have.
We felt like bringing a lot of evidence to bear about the lack of scientific basis for these laws, and in fact the lack of rationality for these laws, that we would take a shot at getting this law declared unconstitutional. The lawsuit was dismissed on a motion to dismiss before we had the opportunity to present evidence to a court, and it is now on appeal before the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. We have a separate lawsuit pending right now challenging the procedures that the city uses in implementing the ordinance. And those procedures have in the past included things like requiring dog owners to waive their privilege against self-incrimination. If you want to get your dog out of doggy jail, you have to admit that your dog is a pit bull, whether you agree that it is or not. You have to waive your right to an administrative hearing. That's a constitutionally mandated, required hearing. At the conclusion of that, my client was faced with a very difficult choice. Her dog had been confined in a kennel for 5 weeks with no natural light, behind a chain link fence. She had to decide whether to continue that dog's confinement in order to fight for that dog's legal release. And she just didn't have the heart to do it. When she would go in to see the dog would just, scream bloody murder and just would cry and did not understand why his mom couldn't take him home.
I just want to go home. I didn't do nothing wrong.
When it came time to make the decision about should she keep fighting or should she let Coco go, she decided that it wasn't fair to Coco to stay confined any longer. And so she agreed that she would no longer try to fight this legally. And I couldn't give her much in the way of encouragement about the possible positive outcome of a continued legal battle. And on that basis, we gave up the fight. And she retrieved her dog in a plastic garbage bag from animal control.
And I'm sure when they walked him down his last little walk that he was happy as can be. The lady that would take care of him, she even had her own nickname for him and requested that she would not put him to sleep because she got so attached to him. Her nickname for him was Cocolicious.
What?
We were Aunt Steph and Uncle Jonathan to Coco. He knew us, he knew our voices. He was just the sweetest thing, and to know that now he's no longer with us, it's just a shame.
At first, having never met him, I was a little wary because I'd never been around a pit bull. But then once I got to know him, like they were saying, you could put a piece of food in your mouth and he'd take it out of your mouth and wouldn't even nibble on your lip. He was just the gentlest.
When they handed my client back her dog in a plastic bag, I felt extremely inadequate.
She was with us the day that we picked up his body. She was very upset. I don't think she knew how to feel or what to say.
I felt like I should have been able to protect that dog. I should have been able to protect my client, and I wasn't able to.
This is the remains of our son, Coco, all we have left of his body. But I'm glad he's here with us. It's a selfish kind of thing, I guess, but because Denver does not even allow you to bury your pit bull in Denver County. They will dig him up if they know.
And so this is what this ordinance and ordinance like it do. Understand that this was a dog that had never harmed anybody. This was just a family pet. There was an incident, I want to say Puerto Rico, about a year ago, where they were tossing stray dogs off the bridge. If people were offended by that, they should be offended by a law like this, because it operates with that same kind of indiscriminate cruelty and stupidity. To city officials, perhaps, these are just dogs whose lives are meaningless and unimportant. People who love animals should be offended by that, because that sensibility is exactly what prompted the officials in Puerto Rico to toss the dogs off of the bridge. Now, Denver doesn't toss dogs off of bridges. They take them back into a room somewhere, I presume, and they stick them with a needle, and the dog dies just the same. And the bodies are heaped into a pile, and they're carted off somewhere, and they're incinerated.
When I was going through a hard time 4 years ago, I kept thinking about Pandora and how she had opened this floodgate of me letting pit bulls into my life and finding homes for them, taking care of them and rescuing them. And I just remembered her honesty and her spirit and her kindness and her love. She was my angel back then. And I had this thought to get a tattoo about Pandora and the fact that now she's my angel who has my back forever, through thick and thin, no matter what happens. Can you see her Chinese character for soul?
There are thousands of pit bulls out there that need loving homes, wonderful dogs that have done nothing wrong. Whenever you're thinking of adopting a dog, you should be looking at the individual dog. Temperament testing it. Is it a dog that fits with your family? Because some people are very active, go jogging, hiking, and some people are couch potatoes. So look for a dog that matches your lifestyle. They're one of the last remaining truly versatile breeds of dogs. Being that they're a mixture of bull and terrier breed, they tend to have the right amount of drive. They like to work, they like to please, or they're content to curl up beside you.
They usually, by and large, love to work. They love to work. They like a job, whether it's doing training, doing agility, doing farm work. These dogs are built to work alongside humans.
It's important to understand that no major animal organization or organization that is knowledgeable about dog aggression believes that these kinds of bans are effective. And that includes the National Association of Animal Control Officers, the Centers for Disease Control, the American Veterinary Medical Association.
Any community that has BSL and you look at the costs associated to it versus the objective, it's out of whack. It doesn't make sense. They still have dog bites. They haven't gone up or down. They've pretty much stayed the same. The population of the breeds they're trying to ban are still holding steady. And for what? For more costs? You could take a fraction of the money it costs to have a breed ban and you could educate the entire community, dog owners and non-dog owners, so that everybody is educated about dog behavior. And this is a dog that was deemed unadoptable. They said he couldn't be adopted. Sit. Educate, don't legislate.
Our lawsuit against San Francisco and fighting breed-specific legislation all across the United States, we're trying to stop laws that result in the slaughter of millions of innocent dogs that haven't done anything wrong other than be born with the wrong look. And I think of Chaco. What if Chaco, something had happened to Chaco and he was sitting in a shelter cell and walked that long walk down to be killed, and his last few days on earth were scared and alone, wondering why his family didn't want him anymore. And I can't imagine Chaco in that situation, knowing what an incredible dog he was, and thinking of other dogs like Chaco. Beyond that, we're protecting people's rights.
Every cultural norm, every legal norm of banging your head against a wall or flinging your body against a wall, and it's a painful struggle, and you suffer in a lot of ways because you know in your heart you're fighting the right battle. You know it's an important battle. You know it's a moral battle. but you have judges who write unkind things, and you have city officials who say unkind things, and you have reporters who say unkind things. And they're unkind in the sense that they denigrate the struggle. They imply that you're a pointless exercise, or that your struggle is inconsequential, and it takes a lot of continual reinforcement in your own mind and with fellow travelers and with your clients and with people who care about this issue to remind yourself, no, this is an important battle and I have to keep fighting it.
It is possible to make a difference. The city of Hohenwald, Tennessee, had decided they wanted to ban pit bulls. So I drive, 4 hours to Hohenwald, and as a city council, you are our voice. This is not what we want. We want you to take control of this ordinance. We want you to make bad dog owners responsible for their actions and fine them. You've got to squeeze that pocketbook until they either straighten up and become responsible, or they get rid of their dog. That's their two options. Be a good dog owner or don't have a dog. Gradually, as each person spoke, began to nod their heads. And when the mayor said, all right, I'm ready to vote, let's take a vote, and he, put his gavel down, and they went down the line, and everybody said no, except for him. And it was the most incredible feeling to know that we made a difference, that, the people that lived in Hohenwald were going to be able to keep their dogs.
Even if, you prefer small, little, yappy, fluffy dogs, as I have one of those, even if all of those things are true, the importance of this issue is how much government power should there be over a companion animal? And right now, they have essentially carte blanche power. You don't think of it as a piece of property, you think of it as a family member. We take pictures, family pictures with our dogs. We celebrate their birthdays. We mourn when they die. It's nothing like a property relationship, and yet that's how antiquated the law is, that you have no redress. And that's really the thing about this issue that, in my mind, should make all dog owners care about this law.
You kind of have to draw a line in the sand somewhere and fight.
You have to treat every issue, every time it comes up, like it's your dog. Because tomorrow, it could be.
Just some number and the hype, but we won't sit by and be silent. We're taking this on. We will be strong for you. We're gonna right this wrong for you. We won't back down. We're done protecting what's precious and true. We will be strong. unless you become the hunted. Well, it's time to confront it. Silent, we're taking this up. I want to thank everybody for coming today. This is a great opportunity for Austin to showcase responsible pit bull ownership, and look how many people are on our side to do that. Thank you so much. Protecting what's precious and true. We will be strong for you. Who will see behind the headlines and the fences? Who will stand against the killing